Matt Wilson and Jared O'Toole are co-founders of two companies, which they'll share a little bit about with us. And I think that we'll all leave here, at least I hope we'll all leave here, really committed to social media and how social media can help all of us expand our presence in the markets that we would like to be in. So please give a warm Fordham welcome to Matt and Jared.
My name's Matt, this is Jared, and today, we're going to talk a little bit about social media and how it can actually help your business. We were looking through, the list of attendees and the companies that you guys come from, a lot of different industries across New York, all across the tri-state county, or all across the 3 states. But anyway, we really want to figure out, do you guys think that social media is a total waste of time? And you can raise your hand if you do, because I know I would say 25% of the people think social media is a total waste of time. Let's say, come on. I'm not going to be insulted.
How many people have Twitter accounts?
Okay.
Not bad. What about Facebook? Most of the room on Facebook.
Okay. You like Facebook, huh? All right. You want to give them the stats?
Yeah, I mean, just to show how important and how much of everyone's life social media really is. Think about some of these numbers, where over 500 million people now have Facebook accounts. That's more than the population of the United States. Over 80 million people are on Twitter, and over 60 million on LinkedIn. And then if you get into something like YouTube, think about this. There's over 2 billion YouTube videos viewed every single day. Every minute, there's over 24 hours of video uploaded to YouTube. If you know about Flickr, which is a system to host your photos, there's over 4 billion photos right now hosted on Flickr. Those numbers are huge. There's no way that it can't touch everybody in some way, personal and business oriented. It really affects everything we do, whether it's your customers, whether it's your business-to-business relations. Something like LinkedIn is very important for business-to-business. But your customers, I guarantee you, are on Facebook. And a lot of them are probably on Twitter or come into Twitter. And these are all platforms you can use to reach them in one degree or another, whether it's through their personal lives or directly through business pages and various things that all of these companies are trying to bring to light on these platforms. So it's just amazing, and these things are growing. That's the scary part almost, that Facebook is on track to reach 1 billion users in just a few years down the road. That's just, I don't know, that blows my mind when I think about numbers like that. It's just crazy to think how much this is ingrained. And what, in about 5 years this has happened at most? We think about even blogs and things like that. Hundreds of millions of blogs out there, and that's been around for maybe 10 years. Guaranteed, whatever industry you're in, there's an influencer who has 100,000 followers reading their blog, responding to whatever that person says about a company, whatever that person says about a product. Maybe it's a meal at the restaurant that they mentioned. There's influencers who are on these platforms that are leading voices in every industry, from finance to healthcare to food and education and whatever else you can think of. And again, it's all happened quickly, which is a bit of information overload. But hopefully today we can bring you through some of the fundamentals of using these things for business. And then also we want to let you know that we want you to get your questions ready, because we know there's a lot of industries here, and we know there's a lot of experience levels from people who have no clue how to use Twitter to probably a lot of you who are on there pretty actively. And we want to open it up to you at the end to just have about 40 minutes of Q&A so that we can really hit home with whatever you want to know about. So let's get into some of the basics.
We started this website, under30ceo.com, and we just brought together people who wanted tools and resources to go and start their own business. They needed to know how. There's so much information out there, like Jared was talking about, the information overload. And we wanted to say, this is how you start your business with less money and fewer mistakes. Because you can type into Google, how do I incorporate my business, or what's the difference between a C Corp and an S Corp, and on and on and on. But you can look at information until you're blue in the face, and you don't know where we wanted to break it down so it was really, really easily. Anyway, fast forward a little bit, and we realized that we had a niche online, and it was something that people really, really wanted to hear about. And we created this amazing following and this community of evangelists for our company who would literally shout from the rooftops and talk about how much they like the company and spread the word on social media. And so people started to ask us, well, hey, how did you do this? How did this, how did these networking opportunities come across? Why? Jared was in Jared was in the Wall Street Journal 2 days ago, and that was completely through social media connections that we made. That's why we're standing here today, because of Angela. Can we give Angela a round of applause for putting this together? And Amy Cosper from Entrepreneur Magazine said, hey, would you like to have coffee this week? I'm going to be in New York. And that's literally because she's a friend of mine on Twitter. I mean, her picture's like that big, and we talk back and forth sometimes because we're interested in the same subjects, but we're able to connect, and she's the editor of Entrepreneur Magazine, and that's, it's just regular networking, but you're doing it online. So anyway, so people started asking us, how do you do that? And this is what we're here to try to explain to you.
So some of the first things you need to do with any of these platforms, whether it's LinkedIn, whether it's YouTube, whatever you're doing online, blogs, you need to just listen what's out there first. You need to get on things and start typing into the Facebook search bar your industry or your business or your competitors or whatever it is, and find out what is already there. Find out what pages are there, what companies are doing, what other people in your industry are already doing on there. Also with, and even in the blogosphere and things like that, find out where they're talking about your company and find out, the opinions. I guarantee you there's people out there bashing your company and there's people out there praising it. From both sides, it's happening. And the problem that most businesses have is they're not in this conversation. They're getting bashed and they're getting praised, but that's completely random conversations. No one's in the middle leading it. No one is being a center place for both sides and both parties to come and discuss and actually have conversation and solve problems. Again, whether it's finance, whether it's healthcare, most businesses are leaving themselves out of that middle point to say, well, let's bring the good and the bad together and come to solutions for everybody. Just like you would do with business-to-business meetings with whoever your direct customers are. You have to bring both sides of the puzzle together with this, and so many companies leave that out. And that's the biggest reason to use social media, Twitter, Facebook, whatever platform you use. That's not the biggest concern, but it's to establish that voice and a place for both parties to come and really lead that conversation in both ways, from both sides of the equation. You can't be scared of the people bashing your industry or bashing your company while it sucks to hear those things. You need to dive in there and find out what is your problem. Let's work together to come to a solution. Let's find the people here that are praising your industry, and let's get them into the conversation, because those are your biggest, those are your industry leaders at the end of the day. They're the ones that are affecting how thousands, hundreds of thousands, even millions of people are thinking about things. So it's important to do the due diligence and really research what's going on in there. With Twitter, with LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, every one of these has a little search bar. Every one of them you can type into Google and say, finance in Facebook or finance in LinkedIn, and it'll give you a whole thing of results of the bigger companies and what they're doing in these spaces. And that's the first step to, and that's the thing that most people leave out. A lot of people, they dive right into Twitter. Make an account, whether it's personal or business, they might dive onto Twitter or Facebook, make an account, and start saying things. No idea what they're doing, no idea what their competitors are doing. And they wonder why in a couple weeks, nothing's happening. No one's responding. They wonder why people are saying, oh, they're blowing them off because this account isn't run well, nothing's working right. When in the meantime, their competitors are out there with full-fledged conversations, tons of followers, and it's because they're doing the research and they found out what people are talking about and what people want to hear about, and they responded to it. Simple as that. They engaged the people. They searched on Twitter for people talking about credit card problems. One of our examples we're going to pull up is H&R Block, and how at tax season, they simply monitor Twitter for people complaining about taxes. What happens? They get people in the door wanting to file taxes through them because they jump in and say, hey, what's your problem? Let's help you. Here's a simple advice. We'll try to answer your questions quickly. How about a phone call now? Now they're on the phone. There the sale process starts to getting that person in the door as a customer. So simple, but what so many people miss is simply doing that research to engage the right way.
I had a friend who was working for Mini Cooper. He was doing some branding for their company, and he went to London and he said, hey, look what your brand, Mini, means to people in America. You know, they didn't really understand the good old-fashioned American road trip, and they just typed in Twitter Mini or Mini Cooper, and people were saying, on Facebook and Twitter, oh, my Mini's in the shop today. I hope he's feeling better. And the people at the company thought, oh my God, I can't believe there's this whole subculture going on about my company. We had no idea, but it's just an amazing way to listen, amazing way to get to know your customer. And it doesn't matter how big or how small your industry is or your niche is, there's a conversation going on somewhere online. Customer service is another fantastic place to be on Twitter and just be able to answer questions. JetBlue does a really good job of this. I mean, what can they really do when you lose your bag? They can at least console you, I guess. But no, they really do try to help you out as much as possible. If you tweet, "Hey, I just missed my flight," somebody will come back to you and try to help you online. Here's our example of H&R Block. People ask tax questions all the time, and they get back, and that's just great branding for H&R Block, because if someone's going to be that helpful, you're going to think of them next time you need to go and file your return. Wells Fargo, you love that example.
They're actually one of the leading case studies online for financial institutions using social media, because they've brought together just about everything you could possibly do with a company online. Oh, actually can't see it all. But what they actually have is so down here with our blogs, they've created some specific blogs like the student loan down. And it's geared towards one blog, 100% geared towards student loans and assisting people with student loans. And they've created other blogs to, again, target different parts of their market and different parts of their customer base. Each one, written by their experts, written by the people at Wells Fargo, but they are very focused pieces of content, and it really is there to help, one to help students, one about history of things, and one about general company news and communication. And they bring this all together to really support everyone looking for the financial advice and direct. A student may not be sure about what they want to do, but hey, go check out our blog, go subscribe to it, go follow it, and you're going to feel more comfortable about a loan coming in the future. They also are a good example of the customer service with their Twitter account, where it's simply their Ask Wells Fargo, and it's simply ask your financial questions. All day long, all they do is respond to people, tweeting to them financial questions, and they reply. Just probably close to 100 tweets a day of just responding to people with these questions. And again, this is great customer service, whether it's a problem with one of their products or maybe it's just financial advice. They're giving and pointing people to the right things. And it's also great when they can point someone over to one of their blogs to answer one of their questions if they've had an article in the past. It's just a great way that they're organizing this content. And to go even another step, and the reason Wells Fargo is such a big case study is they actually created a virtual world to learn your finances. So a whole nother level of social media is virtual reality, which some people may or may not know of online, and how there's games and people, millions of addicted users spending time creating their virtual life online. Wells Fargo has a whole virtual finance game where you actually learn finance in your online virtual character. And you go through ups and downs and different situations in finance. All the ATMs where you get cards or branded Wachovia in their little virtual world. It's just amazing what they do with this stuff, and that's just one of the higher levels of what you can do. But again, it's some of the options that are out there to pull customers in, teach them, and show that your company is truly the expert, dedicated to them, and create that brand image and get it out there in really a million ways possible. And Wells Fargo uses just about all of them right now.
So if you're thinking, what a bunch of losers going in there, playing Second Life and spending their money and learning about finance, I don't want anything to do with that. That's kind of how I think. But if you're an insurance agent in Albany, you can write a blog that just details. You give someone your card at a networking event, and you say, hey, you might be a little bit bit lost about this, about this topic that you're trying to explain to them in person, why don't you go here? I've written something about this on my blog, and you're then solidifying your expertise. So it doesn't, if you're not H&R Block, if you're not Wells Fargo, if you don't have a big budget to spend, that's okay, because everybody can solidify their expertise, build their personal brand, grow their credibility, and connect with people. It's an amazing networking tool. Again, not just on a one-to-one level. You can only talk to so many people on Twitter at the same time, but when you say, hey, I just wrote this about the new regulations in the insurance industry, and you send it out to all of your Facebook friends, and 250 of those come to the site, read it, and say, oh wow, this person's really, really smart. I'm going to think of him next time. He's becoming that expert. Take it a step further, and if you write something that's good enough, you can start getting sourced. It'll start getting picked up if you make the right connections. Next thing you know, you'll be writing for Inc. magazine or Entrepreneur or your industry-specific blog, and you just have to put yourself out there. And there's a lot of opportunities. There's no shortage of people looking for content. You just have to start going out and producing, and it doesn't matter if it's writing, it doesn't matter if it's a podcast, it doesn't matter if it's online video. There's something out there that you can start to produce to help really solidify yourself as the expert that you want to be portrayed as.
And I think you touched on a good point where it's not just big shops. It's not just H&R Block and Wells Fargo that have the ability to do this. I don't know if some of you are familiar with Crumbs Bakery, which there's a couple locations in New York, and I know a lot of people are fans of it. Simply on Twitter, where they have almost 7,000 people right now, and basically what they do is, on Mondays, they'll update you with their cupcake of the week, and they'll let you know what flavors are going to be in the bakery that week. They also use Foursquare a lot, which, if you're not familiar with, is simply a locational thing where I could say I'm right now at the New York Athletic Club, and people would see that. But they give out discounts and tell you what, you can get something for free if you go to a certain location and check in and tell them that you're there. They'll send you a discount code to get a free soda or a free cupcake or something. So it's not something that has to be extremely complicated. Food trucks in New York are a huge thing with social media right now, especially with Twitter. I'm sure everyone sees food trucks all over the city. And one of their biggest things, especially with new people entering the food truck industry, is simply tweeting out your location when your cupcakes are ready, when the cookies are out of the oven and ready to be sold, whether when you pull up into Columbus Circle, and they get immediately a line of 100 people that are following them, waiting for their favorite food truck to be ready and to be open at whatever 6 a.m. or open for lunch or whenever they're working. And it's an amazing way to get people in the door and show people what they're doing. And that's not something that's hard. They tweet once a day about just where they're at for that day. And thus now thousands of people in New York City know where their favorite truck is. Didn't take them hours. It doesn't take tons of content production. It was a very simple method that simply informs the customers where they can get their product, the best price they can get it at, what the deal of the day is or what the flavor of the day is, and there they go. Their customers are happy and can find them, and it helps them do a lot of business.
Right, when my coffee truck moves in the morning, when he's not there, I'm pretty pissed. But, I wouldn't normally just be a fan of a coffee truck on Facebook. It's generally kind of lame. But if that's going to get me a free cup of coffee in the morning, sure, why not? Now I can see his status that says, hey, I'm around the corner today. That's going to be truly helpful. So, we don't want to take too much. There's tons and tons of examples. American Express has a site very similar to Under 30 CEO that just gives tons of information for small businesses. It's called American Express Open Forum, and that literally just brands all this information as American Express, so that when you go to take out your line of credit or you have your business expenses or whatever, you think to swipe your American Express card instead of going to whoever else the competitor is. So just being around that brand, being in the trenches with the people that you really, really want to talk to. That's what this is. That's what this is all about. So we kind of want to open it up for questions and just throw whatever it doesn't matter how silly you think it is, we'll try to answer it.
What would happen if the competition decided to go negative and use the social networking to achieve that possibility? How can you guard against that? How does the company guard against that?
So definitely, you mean, say you had a competitor?
Yeah, I got more than one competitor.
Sure.
I've got a boatload of them. And if we're concerned about competition, what would stop them from putting together a strategy to give us negative reviews?
Sure.
How would you cope against that?
One of the biggest things I think with when it comes to competing against negative reviews and negative things out there is being transparent with your fan base and the people that are following you on these networks. They're following you and they're engaging with you because they've developed a relationship and some level of trust. So you need to, it's usually not, it's frowned upon when a competitor and when negative things are being said. Of course, if it's out of line, especially if it's true, that's one thing. But when it's out of line, or if someone, I know we actually had this problem on our site currently. One of the people we reviewed, his company is it looks like what's happening is a competitor came in, left about 10 negative comments under all different email addresses, and now we got 10 other positive comments now responding to all of them, because I think his company actually sent his employees out to go respond to all of the things, saying how great his company is, how happy his customers are, but everyone's leaving everything anonymous, just saying when it could be the same person. And I think it's really about that transparency on each side of it. With him, I don't see him trustworthy. I don't want to use the products right now because no one is being open and honest about who's telling the truth, who's not. It's just a cat fight going on our site right now, and it looks childish, I think. It's just not something, I don't think it comes across well. And you got to remember that these things that are said online are there forever. Whether it's Twitter, Facebook, on your blog, it is there forever. You can never get away from a negative comment. If you say something childish back to somebody, that's there forever for customers, for people to see, for it to come up in Google, and for someone to point out. It's better to just be open and transparent and go to someone's review and comment and say, hey, I'm the founder of this company. Here's my phone number. If you want to talk about this problem that this person pointed out, which I think is completely false, give me a call. Let's talk. I'm opening myself up to you right now. This is completely false, and I'm just throwing myself out there, or throwing, someone at the company, the head of marketing out there, and let's discuss this problem, because there will be negative things, but I don't think you ever want to get in that cat fight where no one now knows who's telling the truth, and it's there forever. I think it's just best to be transparent and put yourself out there and say, look, this person, I don't know who he is, what they're doing, but call me right here. Here's my number and email address, and let's talk about this problem, because I want to resolve this, and I really don't think this is true, and I want to show you guys that. So that's
now
definitely my answer to that.
Yeah, and anywhere on the web that you get publicity, there's places to comment. And some websites are worse than others, but you're going to see plenty of negative comments. It doesn't matter where it is. Even if you're reading the Wall Street Journal, or some of the blogs are a lot worse. If anybody's in finance and read message boards, that's just a mess all day. People going back and forth. But those comments are out there. So the important thing is that you go out and that you look at this and you decide, am I just going to ignore it, or am I going to respond to this? Because it doesn't matter what your industry is. There's people out there trying to slander each other. But if you can take a reactionary approach, or even better, be proactive about it, then you're going to be able to really clear the slate, because it doesn't matter what is being said about you out there. There's going to be someone else. It's an open web. There's just conversations going out there, and people can say pretty negative things.
And I think actually that's something good that, unfortunately, just because of time here, we didn't get to put in the presentation, but it's not only competitors, but it's a reason to go and grab your names on all of these things. Even if you're not going to use, your Facebook page, whether it's Facebook, Crumbs Bake Shop or whatever their address might be, you want to grab that name, because quite frankly, anyone out there can go and grab your name or your company's name and start, Twitter Crumbs Bake Shop. I know there is a Twitter Crumbs. There's a couple ripoffs of this exact Twitter account, because people just have fun doing this. I know it's actually with BP, and everyone obviously knows about the oil spill. BP's Twitter account right now probably has about 15,000 followers of the company account. And there's a slanderous account that's called like BP Oil on Twitter that has almost 200,000 followers. And everyone follows that account and it's all negative comments towards BP, and it's all making fun of their situation and the oil spill and everything that's going on. So you want to get out there and grab your company's names, because really anyone can. I know, like for us with Under 30 even, we own like Under 30 CEO, Under 30's CEO, a bunch of different names, so that hopefully people aren't able to just grab our brand image and start something where someone else might confuse it with our real actual account. It's a big reason why celebrities have actually certified Twitter accounts and Facebook pages, because all the time someone just puts a little spin on a name, puts the initials up and says it's the real account of somebody, and starts hurting their image and hurting whether it's individual or just overall brand image. So,
and I also want to put a positive spin on that as well. There are people who have come up with Twitter accounts. There's one guy out there, over 60 CEO. And he loves us, and he's always talking to all his friends about us, and we follow him all the time because he's just one of our biggest fans. He's in Brazil, out of all places, and so we have this little enclave of Brazil now that absolutely loves us. So while there's negative things going on online, there's also very, very positive.
If you run a smaller, mid-sized business and you sort of get it that you need to be doing this, is your preferred strategy to be find somebody, under 30 on your staff, or hire somebody under 30, turn them loose on it and, let them go? Or, how involved do you think the head of a company should be on something like this?
This comes down, I think, again, to the time management and what the head of the company has the ability to do. Because we all know at the end of the day, like, there is a big difference between tweeting all day and making sure you have inventory in stock to actually give these new customers, or doing business development and expanding things. I think, a lot of times we find that the head of the companies, it's best if it comes from them. But usually I've noticed a lot of it is really a hybrid. And it's really the head is monitoring what's going on in the accounts, but someone else is usually doing it, whether it's just it could be already an employee, but just someone, maybe there's a marketing department, or someone that just heads up marketing or advertising, and they just are head of the account for the most part. But the important thing, I think, for the head of the company is to always make sure that the voice is correct and the brand image is being displayed correctly. But we do find a lot of times, like especially even in small and mid-sized businesses, it is someone else, even interns and things like that. People can rotate in and out of the accounts even, as long as there's a plan in place for what voice and what information is being put forward. And that's the biggest thing. So again, if the head has the time, nothing's better. No one portrays your company like yourself. It's as simple as that. But there are sometimes other activities that need to take precedent over that.
It's just like the decision to hire a PR firm. If you can do all your PR yourself, then that's fine, go for it. But if you need someone who specializes in that, who has the connections and the knowledge and the know-how, then hire somebody. And also a big problem that we get calls for all the time is, hey, I hired this intern, but he or she sits there on Twitter, but we don't really know what she's doing, and we don't know what we're paying her for, and we haven't seen any return on investment, which probably will be the next question.
We can touch on that.
We want to take the you want to take the ROI question?
Okay, we'll talk a little bit about ROI, because that is a big thing we get from everyone. Everyone at the end of the day, customer service, all of this is great. All of this being active and making friends is great. But you want to know how your company's making money from it at the end of the day. That's with any marketing, any advertising campaign. You want customers. You want conversions. And some of the biggest things with social media that a lot of people don't get is you can really track what's going on with these individuals. There are ways, if you sell something through your website, you can track every individual person coming from whatever account you're on, whether it's Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. You can track where they go and how many of these people come to your site, what they read, what they see, and what they purchase. But this means understanding your analytics and using software on the back end of your sites and finding out what these visitors are actually doing. If you don't sell something through your website, the next step is, do you have an email list? So if you're a service firm or something, a lot of what we do even at Shadow Concepts is, do you have an email list where when you drive these people from, say, Twitter or Facebook, and do you get their email addresses? Do they sign up then to this list so you know that you've captured them in something where they want to hear from you and they want to be mentioned a product or something or sold? Or, when you tweet out like, hey, call me up or send me an email right now to answer these questions, how many people respond and how many people are actively engaging you in that conversation about your product or service and wanting to hear what you have to offer, deals you have going on, or things that are happening. So it's really important to understand that you can't, it's not about just jumping on these things and hoping that maybe phone calls increased or maybe the contact form got filled out a couple more times. You can really track this data and find ways to funnel people and see how that increases, like to an email list, or simply just seeing who's clicking the buy button on your site. Did they come from Twitter? And understanding that, do 5 tweets a day get me someone to click buy? Did 10 tweets a day double that? Do 50 tweets a day not do anything? Should I use Facebook instead? These are all things you have to analyze and look at and be patient with, because it doesn't happen on day one. But you really can break down the metrics and find out what is happening with people from these networks. And also, like I said, if there's no buy button, find ways to convert them somewhere, or even throw up offers like phone numbers and email addresses and get them, see who responds to what you have to offer.
Right, and even beyond the analytics, I mean, this is a perfect example how we're standing up in front of you today. So, we were active on Twitter. We met Tina, who is Angela's sister. Tina wrote an article for our website. It ended up on Yahoo Finance. Then Tina said, hey, I need to introduce you to my sister Angela. Angela said, hey, why don't you guys come and speak at Fordham? And then maybe, thanks to this gentleman, we might be able to get some sort of business out of this. That's a perfect example of how you would track your return on investment. So, sure, absolutely. So the question is, how do I go out and find influencers? If you work for Kate Spade, how do you go out and find people who are going to write about you, who are going to say, I just got the best bag ever, and tell all their friends about it? Who are the trendsetters, et cetera? Was that good that I knew Kate Spade was bags?
It's really funny because I have a Kate Spade bag, and we just had this whole dialogue a few minutes ago.
So this is a perfect example. So you guys had a one-to-one conversation. Now, if you put that on your Facebook, if you put that as your Facebook status, wow, Kate Spade is having a great sale. I just got this awesome new bag. Got a date walking down the street because of it. Now, 6 of your girlfriends are going to go out and buy. So, you blast that message out to 500 people, however many people you know are in your network. And, if you're really, really cool like Donna here, you're going to have more influence over your friends. So,
yeah.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, and I think exactly things like that is seeing what conversations are already going on. I mean, there's already someone out there saying how much they love the bags. When he'll find it on Twitter. And you can search, like I said before, search in all of these platforms for whether people have created fan pages just around handbags. Guaranteed they're out there. Seeing how many times yours is mentioned, or the company is mentioned on these things, or if it's even represented at all.
So now, if you're Kate Spade, you can reply to this person and say, hey, thanks for sharing, thanks for spreading the word. We'd love to, and you can come up with all sorts of plans to help these evangelists and to really engage your core group of followers. But if you were just looking through here, I'm not sure, maybe Nako Baby 711 has 10,000 followers, or maybe they write a fashion blog. But once you just start really diving into to Google, and you start really reading in your industry and finding out who are the tastemakers out there. That was another good fashion word. I'm sure you're also impressed. But you have to go out and find who those people are, just like you would meet them in Soho. You would go out and find out where these people hang out online, and just start researching, start checking out maybe who this person follows on Twitter. Maybe they're a big fashion person. But yeah, just spending the time and doing the research is really key.
Because guaranteed with fashion bloggers and whatnot, there's somebody out there with a big following who, even if they don't know about Kate Spade, you start talking to them via Twitter and you start discussing fashion things, and before you know it, they look at the bags and then they write something on it. It takes time. Again, it's patience, but keep it persistent and consistent, and it's going to, it ends up converting the things. Yes?
It's interesting when you talk about Kate Spade and things like that, but these social networks create real risks for corporations. particularly those subject to regulatory oversight, like the SEC and the FDA, because very innocent comments can be taken out of context. So, for example, a secretary may on Facebook say to a friend, "Our fund is doing very well, you ought to invest in it." That might constitute a solicitation and be subject to SEC censure. So these social networks for corporations put a lot of stress on security and the overall environment of knowing exactly what your employees are doing at all times.
Right, no, I completely agree with that. And that's definitely a big concern out there with big corporations. Most big companies have policies in place where there is, again, this means working with the marketing team and the legal department to come to terms on what you can do as a company. But I think one of the biggest keys that a lot of big companies miss out on is it doesn't matter what the policies end up being, but you can't avoid the spaces because no matter what, the employees are on them. You can block Facebook at work and they take out their iPhone and say something on it, or they go to lunch and say something. And still at night when they go home on their home computer, they're going to say something. If it was on their mind, it's going to come out. And I think the biggest thing that can happen is education in the workplace about those policies, but also coming down to, completely lost my train of thought.
Really, if you do sit down with your PR team, someone who's trained and professional in talking about this in this industry, and then also with your legal team, I mean, even some people like the NFL. The NFL sat with all their players and laid out, here are the regulations, what you can and cannot talk about. You can't go out and disparage the referees. You'll get fined. And you have to lay out those guidelines for the people in your company. And it's something that if you don't address it, then it does become out of control. So that's a fantastic question.
I think that's the thing, just lead in the voice and lead in the policies on it because it's going to happen no matter what. So as long as you take that, if you take that forefront, I think, stance, it limits the possibility of someone saying something bad or something like you said that could violate something, but that's up to the company to really take that stance and educate and showcase. And again, I think the best you can do is limit. Never will completely go away, but at least do the due diligence to limit it.
Any other questions?
Yeah.
I've been bombarded more and more. Over the course of the years, more and more information has been hitting us with Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, to the point where I've been kind of pushing things out of my mind, or emails haven't been thrown to the side. When do you see the saturation point where people just can't take anymore?
I literally had a breakdown 2 nights ago, and I just said I have too many things in my inbox. I know too many people. Too many people are trying to reach out to me, and you have to focus your time and think, what's going to get me paid? What is going to lead to something that I really enjoy? I mean, we talk about this all the time, but there's I heard a great quote the other day. In one Sunday New York Times paper, and this is print edition, in that print, there's more information than the average 18th century man ever knew about in their entire life. Which just blows my mind. And that's in print, that's obsolete. So it's a really good question, but really just focusing and saying, thinking about the return on investment, thinking about where am I going to focus, because 2-3 years ago when all this stuff really started to come out, people would say, oh, I need to be on Facebook and Twitter, but what about Jaiku and Pounce and all these things that don't even exist anymore?
Every day there's a new network.
Yeah, there's all sorts of new stuff. But Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn, that's where you should definitely be spending your time on the social platforms. And then it's hard to rank on the search engines anymore for your blog if you're just out there writing. But you just have to focus, where am I going to do this? How am I going to push it out to my network? So I hope that helps a little bit. Any other questions?
Well, thank you very much. As I listened before, a couple of the takeaways for me were that we all realize that social media is not going away, and that it's going to be important for us to do our research as to what's out there in our space. For me, it's education. What's going on in social media in our industries. And then we need to create a strategy with measurables as to how we want to use social media. And then finally, something that I really hadn't thought of is what policies do we want to educate, or first we want to educate all of our employees on what the rules are about using social media and how are we going to enforce those policies. So do your research, create a strategy, and then create policies that will allow your company to effectively implement and really leverage social media to reach those markets. So I learned a lot, and I really want to thank you all, both for presenting and all of you for participating in our first Dean's Breakfast. We appreciate your feedback. We want to do these probably, Kim, twice a year. Is that the idea?
Yes.
So if you can give us some feedback on other topics maybe, or other venues that might make sense, that would really be appreciated. The formal part of our program is over, but please, you're welcome to stay and network and introduce each other and social networking. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks.